So, where was I? Okay. This is an exploratory conversation. So, it's not, do we need a family office next year kind of question. It's really about what is useful about this model for us at this stage given our goals, right? So if something feels off or overwhelming and like that it doesn't apply, just label it as, a future us problem and we can just keep it moving. So um any questions about that? Okay. So I know we both care about building wealth and doing it intentionally. I mean, as evidenced by the fact that this is even happening, or financial date nights and our investment in Black Couples Invest. And I know you really deeply value leaving a legacy. So I thought instead of just hearing the phrase family office and moving on, let's actually understand what's behind it and see what we can take from that and add to our playbook and our toolkit, even if we're not yet at the billionaire income level. So, in simple terms, a family office is a private organization that exists just to manage one family's financial life and legacy. Okay. So, think they have their own CFO to manage their investments and their cash, they have their own COO, Chief Operations Officer, to run their systems, their operations, and their projects. And they have someone who's it's their full-time job to look over their legacy, their philanthropy, and their long-term financial planning. So it's kind of like if our life and our money were a big and complex enough that we basically have a whole team who's dedicated to dealing with that. Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yep.
A family office is a company.
Yeah, it's a company. So you can have a single family office or a multi-family office, but we'll get into that later. But a single family office manages the wealth of a single family, and a multi-family office manages the wealth of multiple families together.
So this is different than you claiming a family. Oh, a home office is not the same. Okay.
Yeah.
This is not a home office.
No.
This is a family office.
Yeah. This is a wealth preservation vehicle. Think of it that way. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So imagine having multiple businesses, dozens of properties, investments in different countries, a huge complicated tax situation, and kids plus grandkids to think about. Think about what your life might be like at that time. And instead of relying on random advisors who don't talk to each other, that can get really chaotic. A family office exists so that someone has the full picture, right? The investments, the taxes, the legal structures, the philanthropy, it all lines up, and the wealth actually lasts across generations instead of just getting blown up by bad decisions and poor habits of one generation. Because that stat, like one generation builds the wealth, the next generation blunders the wealth. Then they pretty much start all over. So that's pretty much what the purpose is of this type of structure. It's typically used by high net worth families. And you may wonder, like, well, is this something that regular people like us ever really come across? And the answer is yes, actually. The problem is that regular people like us don't usually know what is available to us to preserve that kind of wealth. So these type of events that create this type of wealth can be like you create an amazing startup and you eventually decide you want to exit. Turns out your company's worth $4 billion. You decide to sell it. What do you do with that? Right? That can go into creating a family office, right? Now, if you don't know what a family office is, you would never think to do that, right? You would probably just try to figure it out yourself. You may try to be like, oh crap, I need a tax person because $4 billion. Like, what do I do? So instead of scrambling, you can literally take that big exit and now set up a family office to preserve that wealth and to manage it. And that's somebody's actual job, to grow it, to manage it, and it's away from you. You don't have to have awkward conversations with your kids and grandkids about what they can and cannot do. If they want to get a loan to start a business, if they want money to go to college, they go to the family office and they ask for those things. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Are family offices typically ran by people that are not in the family?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great question. Okay. So there's a few different types of family offices. The first is a single family office, which is a full-blown operation, but for one family. They might have their own investment team, their own lawyers, their own accountants, etc. but they have enough wealth that it makes sense that they would need a team to manage it, right? When you think of like the big families like the Rockefellers and even like Jay-Z and Beyonce, I'm sure they have a family office, right? They're not just out here directing their own investments and picking their stocks, and like they're not doing that. Okay. They have a entire organization dedicated to doing that. A multifamily office is more like a boutique firm that serves multiple high net worth families that share resources and expertise. So it's like if our friend group, all of us, let's say there's like five of us married couples, and we all just became billionaires or multimillionaires, and we were like, whoa, we need help managing our resources. We can all come together and say, let's create a multifamily office, and it would deal with our family, our kids, our grandkids over generations. So there's also a virtual or an outsourced family office. And this is when a family doesn't have an internal staff, but they treat these individual staff members like their CPA, their attorney, their financial advisor as a coordinated team with a unified strategy. So this is kind of like I have a mini version of this right now, right? So you know how I say like, oh, I'm bringing Ursula and Barry into calls together, and we're talking about what does this Ghana investment look like? What does Dubai look like? What's 2026 look like? So it's already kind of starting to practice that in a virtual way, and then you can scale from there. So for us, I think that this virtual or outsourced mindset is the most relevant for the foreseeable future, for right now. But eventually, we'll get to the stage where we actually may need a single family office, or we may decide to join up with some of our wealthy friends and make a multi-family office. So traditional single family offices are usually for families with very high net worth or who had huge exits, right? So tens of hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's because running your own internal team requires a lot of money and infrastructure that they typically don't have, right? Just because they knew how to get the money doesn't mean they know how to manage the money, right? They need professionals for that. And it doesn't mean that the concept of having that single or multifamily office is irrelevant until you get there. It's actually something that we need to understand now to know where we're headed, right? And to be in that mindset to understand, like, hey, this is scalable, right? What we're doing is scalable, and there is a system and a structure that is actually created for this, right? Questions? Okay. So at a high level, family offices manage your investments. They decide where the money goes, how it grows. I've even been reading this book, and they talked about how some family offices will, at the beginning of a fiscal year, decide what percent of the wealth is going to be allocated in what types of investment vehicles. They may say, we're doing 5% crypto this year. We're looking at 20% multifamily, commercial multifamily. We're looking at, 15% stock. They decide what the actual allocation is going to be. And if someone comes to the family office and makes a request that's outside the allocation, hey, sorry, not this year. Come back next year. And the reason they do this is because it helps with tax planning, estate planning, and overall risk management. And it also helps with consolidated reporting. So while we're alive, yeah, we would be involved in the directing the family office, right? We'd be getting those reports on what's going on, how things are being handled. But the whole system is set up to survive us. Like that's literally the purpose. And it's set up to protect our heirs from themselves, so they cannot destroy the family wealth. Um, it can also do amazing things like support philanthropy and help with family governance. Sorry, there's something in my eye. Some people set up family offices for a charitable purpose. Like there's this one guy, he did a TED talk on how his dad benefited from someone else's family office because they decided to dedicate a whole section of their family office to like cancer research with his specific rare cancer because someone in that family had that rare cancer. And so they were able to help him and help his dad extend his life and get treatment, whereas like doctors and other places didn't have those resources. So you can really use your family office for different things. It's not just preservation and passing down of wealth. It controls how the family gives, it controls how decisions are made, and it even controls how the next generation is educated. Part of the family office structure is bringing your kids up in the family office. So they may be hired by the family office at some point. They may have an internship, they may decide to create a new vertical in the family office, a new specialty, which the family office may fund their education for that. There's just a lot of different ways that it can go. Any question? You look like you're in deep thought.
There's a lot of information. I mean, this is the core of what they do, so it makes sense to think about this, what all this is.
Yeah.
And they build on each other.
Yeah.
Right? The tax and the state and legal planning are driven by the investment management, which also has to get put under a microscope to manage risk and ensure that reporting is done properly. So.
Yeah, because the family office is responsible for the entire portfolio. So just like we are currently responsible for our entire portfolios, and I know you already feel it, the bigger it gets, the more it's like I feel like I'm out of my lane. Like I feel like I need help. I need a team, and the more complicated they get, the more depth, the more breadth, the more it's out of your wheelhouse, right? Same thing here. Like once you amass a certain amount of wealth, it's beyond you, right? You need somebody to come in and take control. And so, of course, they handle stocks. They, decide on the bond investment structure, if any, real estate, private equity, direct deals, like venture capital, or you can even say like we want to stick to safer assets. But typically, it'll be the people deciding and looking at the family and where it is. Like, okay, we have three people who are now in their 70s and are about to age out, and then we have three people going to college next year. Like how do we need to change the allocation to account for these full scholarships that we just approved for these people to go to college? You know what I mean? Like things like that. They decide what percent goes where, what risks they are willing and not willing to take, and what the decision making process looks like. So it's setting up all those systems. So it's not just, oh, cousin so and so picked something and now we have to do it. It's no, there's a committee for that. There's a process for that, and you may or may not be approved. Like that's just what it is. But that's the whole purpose of having the family office, because if you left it to us, we just gonna do whatever we feel like doing, and maybe not have the tools to do the due diligence, but we just want so and so to succeed, even though their paperwork needs help, instead of us approving it, maybe the family office is saying, hey, you need to go back and do this. We're going to get someone for you to help you fix this business plan. It's not really cutting it, right? Like go fix it. And then of course another thing is taxes and estate. So they coordinate like what companies do we need? Like do we need a holding company? Do we need LLCs, land trusts? Like in what state? They are literally in charge of all that.
So the office, for example, a
Single family office,
single family LLC would go and find
not LLC, single family office. Because it may not be an LLC.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it may be a holding corporation that owns LLCs.
But it's some company or some entity.
Yeah, it's an entity, and it may not be based in the U.S. That may not be the best structure. But remember, this is someone's job to think about. It's really not for us to know. It's for us to know what it is, but they may say, look, based on where you're at right now, it's best that we set this up in Mauritius. We want a holding company in Mauritius, and we got, yeah, it's an island off the coast of Africa, but it's tax advantaged. Right. There's a reason people invest in Mauritius or keep their money there, right? So they may say, hey, we want to make a holding company in Mauritius, and you got Genfinity, we got Crystal Clarity over here, we got this over here, and then we're gonna put these in this subsidiary, and they're gonna be sister companies, and then like they decide. But they're the experts, yeah, and they have a team, right? The family office has an accountant, tax advisors, whatever that they employ like on a full-time basis. Yeah. I know. So the whole goal of the family office is to keep the wealth in the family. Like that is literally the goal. So you don't want any surprise tax issues, legal issues, family battles. Like it literally prevents all that. There's not going to be battles at death over who gets what. There's none of that, right?
So this is another form of like will and trust and
this is like
direction after death.
Yes.
Okay. Could you put nonprofit organizations in here too, and companies in here as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I see.
yeah. Yeah, I was like, let me change this line. So a lot of family offices are deeply involved in the giving and impact space, so typically they will set up a special vehicle for that purpose, and it's probably going to be something like a private foundation or a donor advised fund. and they will decide what are the focus areas for our giving. Maybe you have a special, maybe something has a special place in your heart, like STEM, and you're like, look, I want this percent of the philanthropy to go towards STEM. Maybe I'm like, I want this percent to go towards hunger, right? Or whatever it is. And that's how the allocations are made. So a lot of family offices use impact investing, which is basically putting money into businesses or projects that earn a financial return and match their personal values, right? So instead of just writing checks once a year, they have a whole strategy around their impact and in an ongoing way, right? So they may be like, you have Cafe Iwe, you have My Cyber Academia. Clearly, these are values that you have. Let's create programming around this. Like, but that's their job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of the Ronald McDonald House. I think that's a Bill Gates thing, right?
I don't know. Yeah.
But or any of the organizations that are focused on a specific cancer or a specific treatment.
Correct.
Yeah.
Even like where I work. So, we have a holdings company in Japan, companies and that's owned by literally a single family. A single family owns all these companies through a holdings company. I'm positive they have a family office.
Yeah.
There's two foundations they contribute to. Like, you see kind of how this could work. You got Pharmavite in there. You got pharmaceuticals. You got companies in various countries. They all have their own entities, but there's probably a family office behind the scenes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So family offices can also help with family governance, which is basically like, what is our mission as a family? What are our values around money, generosity, risk, and work? Who gets to make what decisions about money and how? They often organize things like family meetings, retreats, education for kids and grandkids so that they can be prepared to receive or steward the wealth that's coming to them, not just inherit it and squander it. And on the operational side, they're paying bills, they're tracking expenses, they're keeping records, making sure insurance coverage is appropriate. And in some cases, they even handle things like property management, arranging travel, and other logistics. So the basic way to think about it is a family office is the back end operations team for a family with an increasingly complex life because they have amassed so much wealth and assets. Yeah. So when you think about these like very wealthy people, and I don't know how much thought you put into like, how are they doing all this? They're not. They probably have a family office. Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of like current trends in family offices, which I thought was important to talk about because I keep hearing about it, right? People like us are learning more and more about this type of thing. I even heard on the recent Secret to Success podcast, Jamal clearly is setting up a family office.
Oh, okay, he's setting one up now.
Yeah, he's setting up a family office, and his kids are involved. And now he's trying to get ET on board. He's trying to get CJ to understand and Carl, both of them, to a place where they can get a family office. You know what I'm saying? Because his point was, the higher you go, the more levels unlock. Right? He didn't know about a dynasty trust until it became relevant to him. Why? Because you can't even talk to those attorneys unless you have a certain level of net worth. They're not going to have a conversation with you, right? You're not going to know about a family office unless you're in the wealth building space, right? It's not relevant to you. So more wealthy families these days are building their own family offices instead of just relying on advisors from big banks. So typically, if a family has a lot of wealth, they can go to a bank. Like, they may have a trust and they may designate a bank as the trustee, and that bank is responsible for all the wealth inside of the trust, right? That's been a see, right? Yeah. So instead of doing that, a lot of families now, the current trend is they're setting up their own family office. Now, remember when I told you Ashtony approached me and said, hey, I want to set up a family office. And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, and now I'm like, I see. So many are pushing more of their money into private deals and direct investments instead of public stocks. So that's another trend happening in family office. People are changing their allocations, reducing the stock market. I imagine that that's political right now. That people are making that shift. They just feel like, given the current politics, the stock market is just too volatile, and they trust more in alternatives like direct equity and things like that. There's also a growing focus on impact and sustainability. So a lot of these younger generations, so like Gen Z, really cares about what the money is supporting and not just what the return is on the investment. And so they're unwilling to tolerate certain things if it doesn't align with their values. And so a lot of these family offices are having to shift because they're not going to be involved if it doesn't feel right to them. And they're going to be the next stewards of the wealth. So you still have to appease them. I mean, you don't have to give in to everything they want, but if they say, we care about fraud and abuse and where the supplies come from and that they're not from a warehouse in whatever country where they're being beaten, we want it to be from, you know what I mean? Like, then you have to listen to them because that's where they're headed. Yeah. Yep. Question? Okay. So that's what they're doing over there. Now, like, how does it apply to us? Okay, so we're not clearly in the hire a full-time, family office level, but if you zoom out, we are building a family enterprise with multiple moving parts, right? Essentially, what we've done is merged two small entities by getting married, right? You came with your stuff and your strategies and your values. I came with my stuff and my strategy and my values. And now we're like, okay, how do we reconcile all these things, right? How do we put it together? How do we create a joint strategy? And that's a lot of what we have invested in terms of doing programs like Black Couples Invest and creating joint goals and things like that. So the question becomes, what pieces of the family office model make sense for us to apply now in a scaled down way so that we're building with the same level of intention? Now, I've started thinking about this, and I was having conversations with Shello actually about exit. Okay, there's this podcast called The Exit, and I don't know how much thought you've given to exits, but everyone exits a business in one way or another. It could be through death, it can be through selling, it could be through bankruptcy, whatever. People always exit. That's just, it's because we die. There's always an exit. But the question is, like, what kind of exit do you want? What exit have you chosen, right? Because you can plan for and be ready for your exit. For me, what I envision is building up the vertical that I'm in Ginfinity, eventually us siphoning off into two smaller companies owned by a holdings company and then selling it. I envision my exit being to sell Lenders and Friends. That is my goal. To build it, create systems, make it run without me, and then sell it. That's my exit plan. I'm not planning to run the business until I'm 70, right? I'm not planning to give it to my kids. I don't think they'll want it, honestly. Like, I'm planning to sell it. And what I imagine is with that sell will come a lot of money. And I imagine us using that money to create a family office or to go into a family office. Now, I don't know what your thoughts are about exit or if you've thought about exit, but I imagine if you decided to sell the cyber portion, that's also going to be a huge exit. You know what I mean? So those are the kind of things that I'm thinking about. And I think that if we think about today, we have our day job income, we have real estate, private lending, we have active businesses, we have nonprofits. These are all like very much the makings of, a mini family office. And so we're clearly moving in the direction of a family enterprise, even if it doesn't feel as big as, an SFO or an MFO. But looking at it that way will help us realize, like, okay, this does deserve some structure and thought. It's not just vibes, right? Like, what we're doing is impactful. So I think that some of the things we can take away from this are, one, centralization and roles, right? So thinking about, okay, we want a shared, up-to-date snapshot of where we are. That means, what is our net worth? What are our debts, assets, goals? And of course, these are things we're already kind of working on. Not just 20 separate mental spreadsheets, right? We don't need Infinity Cyber going in a completely different direction that's not aligned at all with the way that Lenders and Friends is going. You know what I'm saying? We need clear roles and strengths. So, like, who is naturally the chief investment officer? Like, big picture, who has the vision, the deal flow, and the strategy? Who is naturally the COO? Who's better at execution, systems, compliance, paperwork? And what does that really mean in terms of how we operate? What do our financial date nights look like given what each person's strengths are? You know what I'm saying? Um, and in that way, our financial date nights are kind of like family office meetings, right? Um, they're definitely on a smaller scale, but they have structure. They're starting to get strategy, but that's pretty much where they're headed. It's just a matter of having the language, which we now have because it's already there, and understanding what that structure looks like at scale, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, so right now we may not be able to see, like, whoa, $100 million. I don't know. Like, I can't imagine it, but you're going to have to visualize it someday, and then when you're there, you don't want to be trying to figure out what to do about it. So family offices usually have formal documents like an investment policy statement that spells out like how should money be managed. They usually have this document that is something that's updated. So I think for us, a scaled down version could be like a 1 to 2 page money playbook, which we're already creating. And that can cover like what are our shared values around money, like such as like freedom, generosity, creativity, security, whatever words we choose.
That's the Harada method.
No, I was thinking, how we had that BCI meeting and the spreadsheet literally says playbook.
Oh
I
yeah.
thought that was crazy because I'd already made this presentation. Yeah, but that's like the start of a playbook, you know what I mean? Or even what we created last year when we had that joint vision and those goals, like we're kind of already creating these documents. It just needs to be centralized and organized. But clearly, our priorities based on how we've been operating are real estate, business, business building, business travel, giving. Like these are, and I'm not saying that we talked about this, but I'm saying based on what we're doing, these look like our priorities. And so some rough targets we may want to look at are like, okay, what percentage of our wealth do we want to be in real estate actually, right? How much do we want to keep as cash? And these are conversations we're already having like, hey, what do we need to have in our emergency fund? How do we get this debt down? All those things. How much are we okay allocating into higher risk investments? What do we even consider to be higher risk, right? Because I know we don't even agree on what higher risk is. What are our boundaries? What do we do and what do we not do? What does over leverage look like for us in investing? What are industries that we just do not invest in, like hard line no's, right? And that's kind of the creation of that investment policy statement that I was talking about, right? Um, and then we can hold any future decisions up to that same playbook and say, yeah, no, this doesn't fit our buy box, essentially, is what it is. Like for real estate, you have a buy box. For lending, you have a lending box. But for your family office, you have your investment policy statement. And we can say, like, no, that doesn't fit our policy statement. Like it's not aligned, right? It makes decision making easier. And it makes it easier to say, like, this is actually a distraction. This is not what we want to do. Any questions? Sorry, I know I've been talking a lot. Okay, so family offices are big on legacy, and you are big on legacy. So it's not just how much money do we leave, but what does this money mean for our family and for the world, right? So naming a few things that we care about, like literacy, education, entrepreneurship, community wealth, African diaspora connections, tech for kids, whatever we decide on, seeing both giving and investing as tools that we can use, right? Giving through donations, grants, having a future foundation or a donor advised fund. I've already started having conversations with Barry about the benefits of a donor advised fund, even though he agrees it's way far out, but he wants us to think about it now, right? Like understand what it is, look it up, see how it works so that it's a tool that you can use later. And even after that, when I was talking about the purchase in Dubai, when I had those meetings with those consultants, both of them suggested a donor advised fund.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, maybe that'll be my next topic. But yeah, they both suggested a donor advised fund for buying the Dubai property because of just how advantageous it is. And I was like, I'm just not there yet. Okay, so no. But it's good to know that like people see and respect these structures and they're still valuable. So we can start shaping our choices now with this lens, even though our amounts are small at the moment. Well, small to us. To some people, they're very large, but to us, they're small. So in terms of how this will play out for us, I've kind of made a rough time. So now between now and the next 5 years, I imagine we keep building income, we keep reducing debt, we keep using our W-2 jobs and growing our businesses. We build and update a family dashboard, which can be like that spreadsheet. We keep adding to that spreadsheet, it seems, every year. We can draft and periodically define like a money playbook or an investment policy statement, or we can put the policy statement in the playbook. We can tighten our advisor team. So, who is this? Do we have a solid CPA that we like? And it doesn't mean we have to use the same person, but who are the people that we rely on? Do we have solid attorneys? Do we have a planner who gets our vision and understands where we're going? So that's 0 or now to 5 years, just getting some of that set up. And as you can see, that's not really a lot, right? There's tons of time to get that done. But I think that's because the focus is expansion, right? It's building the wealth, setting up the system so the wealth can continue to build, and reducing the debt. From 5 to 15 years, I think as things get more complex, by that time we'll have probably multiple kids. Then we'll have to start really treating our advisory team like virtual family office members, really. They'll have to have clear roles, structured check ins. We got to make sure they're talking to each other. And then we may start to focus more on giving. Maybe we pick back up our nonprofit work and transition it to a donor advised fund, or start looking at that, or just being more intentional with our philanthropy overall. 15 plus years, I imagine our net worth and complexity will justify something like a family office. So we're looking at more formal structures, whatever they're recommending, but I imagine it'll be something like a foreign holding company, a foundation. There may be trusts involved, however it needs to be set up. But the point is to lock ourselves into this mindset of a family office and see, where this can live in our current operations. Am I overwhelming you? Okay.
What do you have a number in mind that you feel like we need to be at to where it makes sense to create a family office?
I think for a virtual family office, I'm thinking like up to 10 million net worth.
10 million.
Up to. So like between like 5 and 10 million net worth. I think that's probably time to, yeah, I imagine. And these are just numbers I'm making up. Um, for an actual family office, like the full structure, I think if you have if we have over 10 million in net worth, that's when we should start really trying to pull a team together and doing that research and seeing if it makes sense. But what I read in books is that it's typically people at the $100 million mark.
That start a family office.
Mm-hmm.
100 million.
100 million, yeah, in net worth. Which, if you talk about net worth, it's not hard to get to, because you can have a company that's valued at 100 million. That ain't even counting your real estate. You know what I mean? Like, and that valuation doesn't even mean the company is earning that every year. It could just mean it has bulky intellectual property. It could just mean somebody is willing to pay that for it, because they have plans for it or whatever it is. So the number isn't as big as it sounds, actually. You can get to that pretty quickly, I think. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I think it would be good to do some research to see, like, these days, what is that threshold where people are setting up family offices? Yeah. So, quick exercise. All right. What are the top 3 values we want our money to reflect? So, like, not just numbers, not just vibes, but like, what are the values that we want our money to embody? I mean, I have my own words in mind, but what do you think?
The top 3 values.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm gonna throw out freedom.
Family.
Okay, family.
Progress or progression. Maybe not progress, but progression.
Okay.
Like constant growth.
Mm-hmm.
And community. Well, family and community are kind of the same. I would say family and community are close enough where it doesn't need to be its own word. A third word could be so like family, progression, and um,
You can think about it. It's not. We don't
yeah.
have to know now.
What were yours?
Mine are freedom. So I want, other than passing down money, I want to pass down the value of freedom and what the role of money is in providing freedom. Stability. Like even though I'm pretty risk tolerant, I do value stability. You know what I mean? Like I think it's a wonderful thing, and I want that to be something people or our kids and grandkids strive for as well. I don't want them to be used to living in a volatile state, always hustling, trying to get the next thing and going from check to check. Like to me, that's volatile. I want them to experience and value stability and therefore use that value to make sound investment decisions. Generosity, I like to give.
Yeah.
I want our kids and grandkids to like to give according to what they care about. And then adventure. I feel like I like to explore. I like to see the world. I feel like if we have a family office, that's probably going to be a value that I advocate for. I'm going to be like, look, if somebody trying to go to Africa, I'm going to need you to make it work. Like I need that to be something that is praised and not seen as being frivolous. Like that exploratory trait is just something that I have in my family that I don't see a lot of other people in my family have, and they do not understand me. You know what I mean? They're just like, what's wrong with that girl? And why is she always trying to go somewhere?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I was thinking responsibility, but that feels like pressure.
Hmm.
But
Stewardship.
yeah, I was thinking more about what you said though, like giving back.
Mm.
Like with this, the same thing I said on the call.
Yeah.
With the amount of, if we are doing something like a family office, meaning $100 million, I feel like there's a responsibility for us to be proper stewards and give back to the community in some way.
Yeah.
Whatever way we, think, whatever way hits the value.
Yeah.
Beyond, the family. So responsibility was one. No, okay, that's good.
Okay. These are other two reflection questions that we don't have to answer now, but I do want us to think about as we create our mini family office playbook. So one is, if we magically had family office level money, which is really not that far fetched. What are three things that we know we would absolutely fund or build? So this could be like a school, a
Yeah, so it'd be
business.
something. I would want to do something with STEM education.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, like a STEM center or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some kind of STEM center, tech center, something. What
Yeah.
about you?
Housing,
Housing.
or like a place where people can get good food, no strings attached. Like a restaurant where you don't have to pay, but you pretty much have to be like destitute.
So like, because they have, I'm good. Excuse my French, I may be the wrong word, but like a soup kitchen, how people who are unhoused can go and get food, but you're talking on an elevated scale.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
An elevated dining experience
Yeah.
for the unhoused
Yeah.
with good food.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe, the family office can think about ways to make that sustainable because, you don't want someone to become reliant on that. But I do have a special place for hunger, but also homelessness. So I don't know. I'm debating between housing and restaurant, or like combining them, like having a restaurant on the bottom floor and like housing on top. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are some things that I would think about. And then the other question is, what is one new system or ritual we can add to our financial date nights this year to make them more family office like? It could be something like a quarterly net worth and goals review. It could be an annual legacy and giving night. It could be writing a short yearly letter to our future selves or our future kids, or making a video for them, giving an update or something like that we keep on a private YouTube page, in a playlist that we eventually share with them, as like an archive.
But that's not the key team that you have up there. It says One word for how we want our future family enterprise to feel is different.
I mean, we could do those too, but I just wanted some kind of activity. So
Because you had asked the first two.
I
That's
probably
why.
changed the last one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. And the word that came to mind was unbound.
Unbound. Boundless.
I told you.
Oh, no, just kidding. Okay, this is my last slide. So to ground this, these are some things I think we should do in the next month or two. So first, making a family dashboard, which we kind of already started. So listing our debts, assets, income streams, big goals. We literally have already done that, right? We just have to call it a family dashboard. Drafting a rough money playbook in bullet point form. I think this is something we should do. We should list out our values, our priorities, our rough allocation ideas, and our non negotiables in terms of types of investments or investment industries. So, like for instance, I may be outside of the nuclear space. That may be a hard no for me. I don't know. I got to keep doing research, but as you can see from last night, I just from our conversation last night, like it really, truly, deeply disturbs me. These conversations about nuclear energy and nuclear bombs and nuclear threats, it always gets me like, like I know, and it's crazy because I barely understand it, but like I think it's just this because the first exposure I had to nuclear was the bombing on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I just could not wrap my head around it. I was just like, but why would you do that? You know, why would a human create this? Anyway, let me not get started. So yeah, creating those that playbook with those boundaries and values and things like that. I think that's something that we should do. And so to close this out, I would like to hear from you, feedback. What surprised you the most about family offices? Did you know any of this already? Does anything about this feel exciting or motivating? And if you had one word to pick how you want your future family office to feel, which is on the previous slide, what would that word be? But you already said unbound. For me, I'll say the big takeaway is even if we never hire staff or create a formal family office, we can still run our life in a way that values stewardship with structure, intention, and a clear path for what we're building together. So
yeah. So I never heard of a family office before, so this entire presentation surprised me, every bit of it. But like you said, it's not something that people talk about until they're in that bracket, and it sounds like family offices become a part of the conversation after you hit 10 million.
I just made that up.
No, I just like looked it
Oh,
up.
really?
The numbers you said were spot on. I don't know how.
It could be because all the books I'm reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably just in my yeah.
You Google something, it brings up the AI answer.
Yeah.
And it literally says, hold on, where is that? That type the typical number. What is the recommended net wealth before starting a family office? This is what they said. A minimum net worth of 100 million to 250 million in investable assets is generally recommended to justify the high operational cost of a dedicated single family office. For a virtual, 10 million to 50 million.
Wow.
In assets, suitable for families wanting customized services without the high overhead of a dedicated team.
That's
So
crazy.
you were kind of, yeah. So that was pretty cool and something to look forward to because I don't know any millionaires in my family. I don't know anyone that has a family office personally. So that does drive me wanting to reach these numbers. Not reach them so I can start a family office, but reach them so that there is to know that there is another vehicle that can enhance legacy beyond here's some money. It's education, it's philanthropy, it's all that bundled into one. Yeah, so just learning about the fact that this is a business. When you said it, I'm like, what are you talking about? It's a tax strategy. But I was thinking home office. I don't know.
Like the home office deduction.
Yeah, very, not even close to
But that's what learning is for, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah. What else surprised me?
Or if anything feels exciting or
No,
overwhelming.
it all feels exciting.
Yeah,
but it's something that we're building to. It's not a do this right now. If anything, it's exciting, not overwhelming. I didn't feel overwhelmed at all.
that's good.
Yeah, I did not feel overwhelmed. Um, I was also thinking about multifamily offers and what that looks like. 'Cause I feel like that can get messy.